There was something I learned that said, F your good idea. And what that meant was like, wait your turn and let somebody else initiate the scene. I'm never a big fan of studying negotiation.
So I had another sales experience after going to the DMV and enjoying that experience fully. The guy sat down, asked the questions, why that particular car? And we said, we've got 12 children. How old are they? How tall are they? What sports do they do? And he goes, okay, so you're going to need this, this, and this for that type of thing. Are you looking to do road trip? Like, it was actually, he cared enough to be curious.
I think managers need to really be cognizant of the pressure that they put on everybody, even if it is obviously important. Keeping that stuff light really brings the potential out of your individual salespeople. And I was a manager for a brief moment, and I didn't do a good job there too, because I think I was like, we got to hit this.
Welcome back to the CEO and the Salesman podcast. My name is Matthew. Today we're joined by Kevin Hubschmann, CEO of Laugh.Events. Very quickly, g'day, Kevin. How are you going?
I'm going well. How you doing, Matthew?
Yeah, mate, really well, really well. Just for people joining us, so Kevin is the CEO of Laugh.Events, a business that brings improv into training events that actually helps corporates and businesses get greater, skills and greater engagement with their training. And so Kevin's grown that over the last 4 years from just himself doing it to more than 30 cities around the US. So that's amazing. So Kevin, what I wanted to start with here is, how did you get into sales? What's that story?
Yeah, well, again, thanks for having me. Ultimately, I got into sales. I graduated from Georgetown, got a BS in business, and all my friends were, going off and doing a lot of banking jobs, a lot of finance jobs, and I was like, I just don't fit into this category, and I don't know what I want to do. So, a friend introduced me to a guy that was running a software startup called Splash in New York City. And they could not hire me. They had no money, and I had nothing to lose. My brother gave me a couch to sleep on. And I had a friend's dad who gave me, tables to bus and wait at his restaurant. And I said, I got nothing to lose. I'll work for these guys for free. And until a spot opened up, they, let me do whatever. So I just got my hands in there like an entrepreneur and, made service calls or, even had to get into the code of doing stuff, had no idea what I was doing, kind of went as I knew it. And then eventually they were like, you seem good with people, you want to try your hand at sales. And, 6 years later, I built that sales team out. By the time I left, it was about 20 plus people. Full sales org. I was working with Fortune 500. I was, doing millions of dollars a year in sales, making six-figure enterprise deals. I mean, it was exhilarating and it was super fun. And it really allowed me to sink my teeth into the world of corporate sales.
Yeah, cool. And so that was all based out of New York, was it?
Yeah, that was in New York City, and right down the block from my office on 26th and 6th was my office. I think it was 26th and 9th was the best improv theater in New York called the Upright Citizens Brigade. And if I was working late, I would go to this show. It was called Ass Cat. It was so amazing. It was just a place for me to just laugh my butt off. And I knew no matter what day I had, this show was going to really be a lot of fun. And I had to go to it. And so I kept coming back. And eventually after work, I would also then sign up for improv classes too. And so that was, what also inspired me to want to get into improv a bit more. And my brother, who was, had previously been in the scene, about 10 years older than me, he started a group with me, my other brother, my best friend. We called ourselves the Brothers in Flaws. And so between doing classes at UCB, Upright Citizens Brigade, and training with the Brothers in Flaws, I was getting like 3 hours a week of improv training for about a year and a half. And it was awesome. I was during the workday, I was selling and I was doing a lot of things. And then at night I was able to, get my hands dirty with some improv.
So, Matt, how did the improv because all salespeople, I don't know if you probably know this already, all salespeople think we're really charismatic and interesting to talk to. And so we low key look at comedians, go, I reckon I could do that. Just take some, if only, right? Maybe I'm just making good money. So what did you see as the difference between you, how you performed at work pre doing the improv stuff? And then, a year or so as you were going through your improv troupe and going to the training, what did you see the differences were? Were there many differences?
The thing that stuck out to me the first time I didn't notice it at first. I was just having fun and I was laughing. I was really looking at it as a real release. When you laugh, you're releasing all of these different endorphins.
Sure.
And you're biohacking and your cortisol levels decrease. So it's the ultimate thing to do to de-stress is have a good laugh. And with improv, especially when you're doing it with people you're having the time of your life. So I really looked at it like a stress reliever. But the first time I noticed it actually improving at work was when I shut up. I actually I was listening to someone and normally I would have interrupted them and I would have said, no, here's my idea. Except in improv, there was something I learned that said, F your good idea. And what that meant was wait your turn and let somebody else initiate the scene. And in the business setting, I remember myself almost Neo from the Matrix, slowing down, my thoughts were the bullets and they were just do not say what's on your mind. F your good idea. Let this person finish and add on top of it. And it was the first time that I noticed that, as salespeople, we're individual contributors. We got to hit our own quota and we're going after it. But there are times to collaborate. And it was that moment where I was able to silence that individual contributor part of me and then listen better. And then suddenly I found out I was listening so much better, not just to my teammates, but to clients, and my discovery calls were suddenly really good. I wasn't taking the call where it should go. I was listening and kind of seeing what doors the client would open and keeping them on track. But, the ultimate thing was I was able to think on my feet more and I was able to listen to what the client's actual problems were.
And I absolutely love that. There's so many times because over the course of my career, I've tried to have, people do maybe it's a yes and, not a yes but. It's and this. And one of the other thing is the person that speaks first loses. That's a typical thing that's said in sales. But I guess below that is what that really means is give enough oxygen to the person who is speaking and allow them to fully express themselves. Not everybody is. Very few in sales. What I talk to people about is this is probably the first or second time they've bought something like what you're selling, but this is the 50th time you've sold it. So your ability to process and think in multiple different threads is way beyond this person. They're an expert in their field. You're an expert in this field. Don't expect them to be as quick with their delivery, with their understanding, with their processing as what you've got, because you've done it. This is your job. This is their have to do. I've got to buy this thing. I've got to solve this problem. What are the ways I can solve? They can solve the problem with your product, this product, or this product, or this product. So they've got many more things to think about, and it's not their job to think about it.
Totally. So, and I think when it comes to, I was always I'm never a big fan of studying negotiation, and I probably should do it more, but I always feel in negotiation, a lot of people say hey, what are my tips and tricks, and don't let the person talk first, and all these kind of things that almost make it feel like warfare. And I felt when I stopped trying to think through that and I led with curiosity and I led with this idea of, yes and doesn't mean agreeing to things. Yes and just means hearing what they're saying. It's listening is the yes. And the and is something to add on to keep the conversation going and not kill the momentum and kill the flow. And what I found was, especially as a comedian, whether, I also got into stand-up comedy at this time, and, the difference between improv and or not the difference, but something that actually is kind of the Venn diagram in the middle is you have to have an immense amount of curiosity and kind of continue to ask questions and get to what the game of the scene is, or you see in crowd work all the time, curiosity leads to a really funny moment. We see it in clips all the time of people's crowd work. And that's really what it is. It's like this curiosity of asking questions and, again, forgetting almost like why you're on the call in the first place. It'll come back to it, but like immersing yourself in the conversation, because you're able to uncover a pain point almost always that, in comedy, it would be the laugh, but in sales, it's the aha. It's the, oh, they care about cost savings, or they want to make more revenue, or, they want to create more efficiency. It's listening to these points that you didn't know beforehand, and you wouldn't know unless you really let your curiosity take over.
Mate, I absolutely love that. It's so true. The one of the biggest challenges is that I see is that there's a path that people must follow. Like, this is what happens in the first call, the second call, and the third call. And if you give the person enough time to speak, they're not there for a haircut or a pizza. They're there to have a conversation about B2B SaaS or whatever the thing is you're selling. They're going to get around to it. And if you give them that oxygen, give them that space to get around to it, it's amazing how much they share. It's amazing they actually start opening up. Because, it's like saying, oh, well, hey, it's like walking past somebody in the hallway. Hey, how you going? Good, thanks. How are you? Like that, the brain's not even engaged in that. The mouth is just moving. You start asking deep questions and really understanding, how are they really today? How, what's the thing operating underneath? Then we find ourselves in a situation where we actually get to the real story, the truth. And the truth is what actually either tells a person whether or not they should buy a product or shouldn't, not whether or not you've got a commission to earn.
Absolutely. And you made me think of something. It's like asking them how they're doing. Like, my biggest, oy vey moment is when someone asks me, like, how's the weather out there? And I'm like, oh my goodness. Like, this is not, we're not diving into this. So anytime that I start my sales conversations, I'm asking, like, how is their day going? Or, really going deeper into, what it is. Because when you're able at the top of a call to really get curious outside of, like, what's your weather like? What's my weather like? We both live in Earth. It's like, if you're able to kind of understand them more, you can take that. And I sometimes, if you can't remember it, I'll write down a note, whatever they had mentioned. We were talking at the top of this call, like, you went to the DMV, and then when I'm closing the call, I'll be like, I'm going to hit your follow-ups. And by the way, I hope everything at the DMV settles out, or probably something more clever than that. Or I hope this wasn't as painful as the DMV. And it's that moment of the callback, going back to like a comedy phrase, of like, hey, how can I be curious in the beginning, have the individual give me that information back, and then reward them at the end with this callback that allows me to be more memorable to them and look forward to my follow-up.
I couldn't agree more. The curiosity, you said, curiosity is something that's so important. And I was talking about a very ordinary sales experience yesterday, very, very ordinary. And I don't think the guy even asked my name. I don't think he asked our name. I don't think he really cared. I guess we went in there loaded with, hey, we like this car, we saw it on your website. But other than that, there was no, why do you want that car? So I had another sales experience after going to the DMV and enjoying that experience fully, 3 hours. And we got to go to then the car yard down around the road. And this guy sits down, asks the questions, why that particular car? And we said, oh, we've got tall. How old are they? How tall are they? What sports do they do? And he goes, oh, okay, so you're going to need this, this, and this for that type of thing. Are you looking to do road trip? Like, it was actually, he cared enough to be curious, or he had a personality. Both probably true compared with the guy from the other day. And with that, we actually engaged. And I said to Terry, I'd rather spend a couple of extra $1,000 buying something from this guy and this dealership than get the greatest deal on earth from the other one, because that just gives me the, to coin a phrase of people much younger than I, it gives me the ick. Like, I'm not interested in having, I don't want to go back there. I don't want to deal with those guys. It was just awful in every possible way. So I want to sort of switch over to your growth of your business. So you're in 30 cities, and you went from one or just yourself running these events. How did you grow the business to 30 cities so quickly?
Yeah, so it really starts with aligning ourselves with, the best improv facilitators in the country. And a lot of my main focus was, I'm in New York City, capital of comedy, arguably in the world. And I did all this improv and I was in the comedy scene. So it kind of started with my own network, right? Hey, you just performed on my show. Do you also want to, do you have any experience, doing improv and teaching? Great. I got something set up. Let's do that. Do you have anybody to recommend? And, it was really this recommendation engine that I had created of saying like, hey, how can I, uh, if I really loved this individual's work and they're going to keep working with me, how can I ask them for a recommendation because they want to keep working with me in this part of our business. And so they're going to recommend someone that's going to put them in a good light. And, that is what allowed me to, really grow it into different cities, and we really also let the market dictate what cities we were going to go after, right? We had like the major cities that are aligned with improv, New York, Chicago, Toronto, LA, in Texas has a great scene as well. Dallas, Houston, Austin, all of these great cities. But then, when we turned on, some ads and did some discovery and we were able to be like, oh, whoa, like there's interest in Minneapolis, or oh, there's interest in Kansas City, or there's a huge pocket of Florida that is has an immense amount of interest in improv, and that was a real big learning for us. Like, let's grow as the market dictates, and then when we find a new market that's interested in working with us, let's find somebody that is trusted, has a lot of years of experience, that can be recommended, and let's grow that way. And, it's allowed me to collaborate with each and every one of our facilitators, knowing the experience that they have, but then merging my knowledge of the business world to say, hey, you have taught improv this way. I want you to keep it that way, but here's the nuggets that I can share with you about what I know about being in the corporate world. This is a sales team, or this is a marketing team, or this is an HR team, or, this is just a company event and they just want to get silly and have fun. And they're sick of doing escape rooms, no shade on escape rooms, but I typically lose to escape rooms. It drives me nuts. But, it's really amazing because like we didn't invent improv for business. It's something that's taught in business schools. There's a lot of data that shows like Google has done improv workshops for training for their employees, and there's studies that have shown that they had a 50% increase in collaboration. Salesforce did improv training for their sales team. They saw a 30% increase in sales conversions. Pepsi, they also did improv and they saw a 25% increase in crisis management. So it's something that has been proven. And what the difference that, we're trying to do is just really hone in on the professional development side of it. And that's why we call it laughing in development.
I think that's so important, and I don't want anybody who's listening to sort of walk past those numbers that you just said. So a 30% increase. So just hit me with that. So you said that Meta, or did you said Meta did the work?
It was so it was the studies that we found were from Google, Salesforce, and Pepsi. With Google, it was a team building event, and they had a 50% increase in collaboration. And there's no specific stat, but a notable rise in a generation of new ideas during brainstorming sessions. It goes back to like that curiosity aspect. Like, hey,
yeah,
we need to. I mean, this was actually a great divergent thinking versus convergent thinking. So,
yes,
with convergent thinking, our brains are with AI. is like AI is taught to do convergent thinking. We're getting to this one answer. Now with divergent thinking, that is actually where improv is the key to training your divergent thinking brain. And so, there's this really great exercise of like, I think your listeners will really like this. We did this on a workshop, but it was, instead, to start a project, ask your team what's going right with the project.
Yep.
Not start out with what's going wrong. And you just have people list, hey, we're having we sent emails. Like that's like the base, right? Like what's going right? Like our emails are delivering. Like it could be any kind of small thing to like, we've sold something out of this campaign, whatever the positive things are going. And it starts to get you to, come up with a bunch of different ideas and brainstorm like all these positive things. It's also like tricking your brain that everything's going well when it might not be. But more importantly, you're coming up with new ideas. And it's just like the other day, me and my wife, we watched a movie, terrible movie. And instead of saying like what we liked about it, we said, let's name all the things that we absolutely hated about that movie. And the list was like 20 things, but we just like way to train your brainstorming brain, because we're now so locked into asking AI to deliver us answers, even AI brainstorm for me. But improv is a really great way for increasing your generation of new ideas.
I love that. That's so important to think, as you said, divergently. And our first conversation, I was telling you how we, and I've sort of half lucked onto some of these ideas in running my own sales teams. Is we would have a word of the day, a stupid word of the day, and it was everybody's goal to see if we could weave that stupid word, into each sales presentation, whether we're presenting from stage or presenting on the phone. The idea was to get attention to the other salespeople and drop that, and that could be it could be Sandshoe, it could be Namibia, it could be and the sillier and the longer the better, right? And so actually, what that did is it had the salespeople not just being focused on driving down a path, but thinking, how do I weave this in? And in doing that, because other salespeople aren't going to do that, aren't going to have fun with it, aren't going to be broad enough to actually be able to weave the word Namibia into a sales pitch. What that does is it also shocks the prospect out of the typical malaise or just drudgery of having to listen to a salesperson doing features and text specs, feeds and speeds, and it's better than this, or it's better, faster, cheaper, that sort of nonsense. So we've sort of lucked onto a couple of the ideas. It would have been great when I was running my teams to have some formalized stuff around that. I would have absolutely loved it.
So I'm imagining somebody in like, did you say Mabibia or Nvidia?
Yeah, that's right.
But like one of the things that, you mentioned, just to get on that for a second, that's called in improv, that's called the game of the scene, and it's like,
okay.
It's this, I mentioned one of the other stats was Salesforce saw a 36% increase in sales conversions. Again, that's just like
massive. Like that is 36%. People will do $1 million trainings for 3%.
I told you in a previous call, someone was like, I guarantee if you can get 1% better, we've done our jobs. And I was like, what a threshold that is. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Rate the bar you've set for yourself. But yeah, that game of the scene is, hey, let's have some fun with each other. Like, when you're on a stage in improv, it's like, what's that magic word that's going to have the audience, winking back at you, or you're winking at the audience and be like, hey, we got this going. And that forces a lot more camaraderie, and it allows the other person to be like, I want to do that. And I want to do that with my team. And, I'm going to come up with this next word, and I'm going to really weave it in there properly. So it can be like when I say like that increase in sales conversions, I think a lot of people really like to go to those sales trainings that are like how to close faster and decrease your sales cycle.
The 84 different closes to emotionally manipulate your prospects,
Exactly. And a lot of people forget these like nuanced things and these soft skills that can really take things far. And I think that is really where improv is really great. It's like, you're working out these soft skills that otherwise can kind of die when you're in a vacuum, whether you're like working from home or you're only selling to one person. Like, we're individual contributors. So, that team camaraderie can increase it all the way around too.
You're such a, you've got to really thread the needle because, with sales, I had a sign up in the sales room and it said your pay rise will become effective the moment you do. And so there's a lot of pressure on salespeople. So my sales team, back in the day when you can do this type of thing, like the minimum wage in Australia at the time was $620 a week, which is, this is many years ago. That's minimum wage. I would actually advertise, everybody in my room's on $250 to $350. But the minimum wage is $600 a week, then you got to pay tax on that, right? So it's $400.
Yeah.
So the thing is, everybody was a high. So if you didn't sell anything, and you weren't on bonus or getting the extras, you would literally be on minimum wage as a person driving a BMW to work. So you've got to be at a certain level, but everybody was there doing really well because there was some social proof of that capability as well. Obviously, a product and a good market, good advertising, all the contributing factors. But so it can become very serious, and certainly with end of month, end of quarter push, it become a place where salespeople get too serious, and nobody really wants to buy somebody who's just desperate for the deal. And finding ways to lighten the mood is exactly what you're seeing with the 30% increase in relation to sales.
So, yeah, I mean, I like to use the phrase, feel good, play good. And, if I think we're living in a growing society of like, man, with AI, what are managers going to be doing? Like, what is the role of a manager in a world where, like, we're going to have AI really doing a lot of forecasting and doing things like that. And in my opinion, my favorite managers were the ones that kept me calm, that like did what they could to like know that I've got the juice, the ones that really put the confidence in me. And didn't threaten me with a pip or didn't threaten me with like, if we don't hit this quota, my job's out and yours might be too. It's like just a really insane thing. And so, your clients or your prospects can feel that too. They can feel the stress that you're emanating off yourself, that you're like, can you please close this deal? You can when you lower the audience's stress, you're going to increase their own retention. If they know that, you obviously have to add urgency, but you have to create a mood of levity and lightness, and find your way. And I think managers need to really be cognizant of the pressure that they put on everybody, even if it is obviously important. Keeping that stuff light is really what, brings the potential out of your individual salespeople. And I was a manager for a brief moment, and I didn't do a good job there too, because I think I was like, we got to hit this. Like, it's so easy for a manager to be like, let's go, because like I was making a lot more money when I didn't have to carry your bag too. So like, let's go, especially when you're going from IC to manager. And so, but then I realized like I am ruining these people I'm working with. Like, I'm taking out their X factor by putting this extra pressure on them. And it's something that really about staying calm, that's valuable for managers too, is them understanding, feeling themselves in this moment, recognizing how their actions are, what they're taking. The improv does a really great job of that as well. But then how can I help my team remain calm and keep light and keep levity and not just surprise them with a pizza party, because who cares? It's like, let's surprise them with like really good vibes and really good emotions, and it'll pay back dividends.
Kevin, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Can you give us one or two ideas of how a manager might be able to lighten the mood, or how or maybe an exercise from one of your courses. Obviously, I'm not asking for any IP here, but what's something that somebody could, listening to this, go, you know what, I'm a manager or I'm an individual contributor. How do I keep sane as we run up towards the end of the last quarter, that last month, that push? I need to hit my financial goals. I've got a lot of bonus writing on this. These things are happening. There's heaviness over here. Is there an exercise that you can share from your time in comedy or in running those groups? Actually, I do want to talk to you about your show as well. You mentioned that earlier, but is there anything in particular that you could share with the audience at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, when I talk about a lot of these exercises, it's like the way that our programming works is that we're creating like a whole stacked line of games and exercises that kind of build up to that ultimate goal. And so, what I would say is I'm trying to think of, like, you put me on the spot of like trying to think of any other sort of games and activities that we've done. But I would say, like, off the bat, it's like, do you only get people, like, are you using levity and being a personable person and honestly being a human? Do you use that as like a last ditch effort? Like, is this you being like, quick, let me see, like, that they know I care about them because it's the last, month of the quarter and they're falling behind. Like, are you showing up consistently? Are you kind of following the rules of what you want your team to kind of have, this open line of communication? So I'd say, like, in improv, just there's a general rule of kind of like being consistent and being in line with who your character is. And so if you are suddenly cool one month and not cool the other month, and you're kind of like giving people whiplash from your own mood swings, that, number one, is something that just in general managers need to keep in mind. Am I only rewarding people when they've done something good? Am I only like getting mad at people when they're not hitting quota? Like, how constructive is my feedback? I think that, like, that is a really important thing in the improv world of, like, people on stage with you they're going to yes and what you're doing. And so if they're going to follow your lead, and if your lead is being fun and chill and, but really caring about them, they're going to mimic that back to you, and they're going to be a lot less stressed, but they're going to know that you care. And so they are going to care then back with you. And then the kind of second thing that I would say is, like, there's a ton of different improv games that you can just kind of, you don't have to do a full day long improv workshop, or you have to, like, the other thing that's really popular for us, we do amazing corporate comedy shows, and we have people doing that to celebrate the end of a quarter or getting exhausted. That's really good too. But, like, there's so many improv games that you can whip out. One that I absolutely love, it's very easy to play, but it's one word at a time story. And it's when people will go around and, you got 5 people in a room, 6 people in a room, it could be 30, it doesn't really even matter. And you go around and everyone has to contribute one word, and one word will then you have to tell a story by contributing one word. And what I absolutely love about this, I love playing this game when it's like, a whole different group of teams with sales BDR or sales engineers or account executives or managers. And we have people going around in this circle. And you notice that the first time that people go around, people will be going for like a money word, right? Like not an and or an a or a but or a the. They're going to go for, like, a silly word like banana or, balloon, like something, that's like a fun word. But the thing makes no sense, and that's what you notice when people everyone goes for the home run and wanting to be awesome themselves, it never goes well. So then we ask them to do it again. And when you do it again and you say, don't be afraid to be the A or the or the but or the and, then you have a real story. And then you start to, especially in sales orgs, it's when you nail it the second time or you need to take a third time to nail it, you're able to be like, that's what this org is about. Some people, like the AEs, are going to get that big word, but then they need that A or that but from the sales engineers to take them over the finish line. And they need that, closing remark from the manager to finish it up. And it's kind of this whole idea of like, we're all on a team together. And we are pulling this thing as we go. Everyone's going to have big roles. Everyone's going to have small roles. But at the end of the day, we all win when we're winning as a team.
I love that. That's fantastic. So, your conversation, when we first spoke, you talked about your show, and so you were running the sales team. You were also in your improv group, but also you had a show at the same time. Is that right?
So the improv group, like all great ones, fell apart. And my brother got married and had kids, and my friend moved away. And so I started to get more into stand-up comedy because that's more of the, individual contributor type part in comedy. So I started I started to do stand-up around New York City. And, I was like, why am I looking for clubs when I can for spots for like 5 minutes at a time, as prominent as these clubs may be, I have a lot of people I can invite, and I have an office that has an amazing stage and amazing lighting. And I also have a sales skill, which is reaching out to people and failing, so I'm going to reach out to the biggest comics in New York, and I'm going to ask them to be on my show. And that's just what I did. And that allowed me to perform, to do this show called the After Work Comedy Show, which we still do. And it allowed me to, do this show, have the best comics in the country, and this was right before comedy for these folks. Really, they were already big at the time. That's why I went for them. But then about a year, 2 years, 3 years later, they all ended up with like Netflix specials. I mean, these are people like Mark Norman, Sam Morril, Stavros Halkias, Rosebud Baker, Judah Friedlander. I mean, he was already massive. Mary Beth Barone, these just really amazing comedians that were kind enough to be on my show. But it was this moment where I was like, okay, if I just go for it and I use that prospecting skill that I've so mastered, so to speak, which is really just reaching out with knowing that no one's going to reply. That's really what mastering that skill is. Knowing it's not going to go well when you do it. But knowing that, there's a chance that something magical can happen if they do say yes. And that's what happened. And what we also started to do in the show is we started to invite somebody that is not a stand-up comedian. I call it the after-work comedian, someone that really wants to do comedy, but is not going to quit their day job. So we let them come up and do a few minutes, and they would bring their friends. It was a lot of fun. And it was just we just did a show in April, and we had 3 people, 3 after-work comedians. One was a Wall Street trader. Another person was a marketing director, and the other person was a farrier, someone that puts shoes on horses. So it was very
How do you find a farrier in New York? Is he just putting the horses on the shoes that go around Central Park? That's his whole gig?
Hey, that's one of his clients amongst many. And so it was so fun watching them all 3. We had 3 amazing comedians. They came from the Comedy Cellar, did our show, went back to the Comedy Cellar essentially. And those 3 started the show, and then these 3 ended the show. And everyone in the audience came through and that to support their friends. And we interviewed them after, and they felt like they jumped off of they even mentioned this. It feels like I jumped out of a plane. That was so much fun. But they were pacing up and down the room beforehand, and the
adrenaline is just dumping into the system.
Crazy, but it was so fulfilling to have them go through that and give that gift to these after-work comedians, because it really was a really new experience. But they got to kind of feel what it's like to be a stand-up comedian for a night, be in a lineup with other amazing comics. And that's really what the show has turned into.
So it's every week still, or you've taken it back to more of a
it's more of a, we're looking for a new home right now to relaunch it this fall. But yeah, right now it's kind of in a hiatus period, but we're always looking for people in New York that are looking to get up on stage and just do 3 minutes. And then we kind of fill in the rest. I always like to say, like, this show is awesome because, like, your friends are not coming to support you. They're coming to see an amazing comedy show that you happen to be in. Because the shows where they're coming to support you is like, that great job. That was so good. And you're like, that was terrible. It's going.
I have terrible anxiety watching some open micers, like, cause I just the anxiety. I can't. It's hard to watch. Like, that's probably my own issue.
Open mic is terrible. It's like, open micing is horrible. It's one of the reasons I started the show, was like, that was the only way you could get on stage, was either bringing people to what's called a bringer show, or going to an open mic that's full of other comics that are really trying to work on their own material, and frankly, like, do not want to even laugh at your jokes, because then that, like, takes a little bit away from them in a way. So it's a very weird environment. So that's also the thing. Like, people, want to give this a shot, whether they're in sales or not. And it allows them to have, like, a really safe space. And that just comes to kind of wrap it back up. The reason that makes these shows so fun is that the environment is so supportive. And that is what is really critical if you're a sales manager, if you're any sort of manager, is that you're creating a really supportive environment. I mean, even the comics that are on these shows, they love going on our shows because they're like, that crowd was awesome. And the crowd's awesome because they're supportive, and we've created an environment that's very supportive. So any joke is welcome, and a lot of jokes, even if they're medium, are welcome, and people are going to laugh. And that's a lot about, we talked about all of those stats. That's the through line. That's the common denominator of all of these, is that people that invest in these improv workshops, they're investing in a supportive culture. And that supportive culture can find its way in ROI with collaboration, or with sales conversions, or crisis management. When you're feeling supportive and you can make mistakes in a public setting, sky's the limit.
Yeah, I love that. Well, look, Kevin, it's been absolutely a pleasure to have you on. So if anybody's listening, they obviously Laugh.Events if you want, better sales, better engagement with your team, better, for team building, and also crisis management, super important. I wish this was around back in the day when I was running my teams. I think that's absolutely fantastic. And also, so when you're getting your show back up, the after work show, or if there's somebody out there with an office space ready to roll, want to host something, I'm sure Kevin will be happy to have a chat. So look, Kevin, what's the one thing? I don't like doing one thing, so I won't do that. But is there anything in particular you want to leave the people with in relation to how they should think about selling, and think about engaging with their team, and think about engaging with the market?
I'd say what I started this conversation with, which is listening. Listening is everything. Active listening is everything. And I think when you're able to listen to your customer, you're able to understand what they're going through personally, what they're going through in a business setting, and you're able to prescribe them a solution, not sell them, not pitch them, but you're able to prescribe them something if you're doing a really good job active listening to what they have to say.
Perfect. And you've done exactly what you said to do, which is do a callback from the beginning. So thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it. Kevin, hang around for a minute after I stop the recording, but thanks so much, Dream. I really appreciate your time today. Talk to you soon.
Absolutely. Thanks, Matthew.
My pleasure. Bye for now.